Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's so lovely to have you all here. My name's Casper Kyle. I'm a fourth-year graduate student here at the Harvard Divinity School. So welcome if you've never, who's never been to the Divinity School before? Oh, wow, what a lovely thing to have you all here. Yeah, that deserves a round of applause. I see Lindsay. Yes, welcome. It's great to have you all here. For those of you who don't know, bathrooms are just downstairs. If there's a fire or some sort of emergency, we all have to go out that side of the building onto the green. Yes, here we are. I'm going to let Angie do some general kind of background to this event, and then I'll introduce Greg. But I just wanted to say a quick thank you. We've had an amazing team bring together not only this event, but everything that's happening this weekend. So thank you to Lou and Amanda, Katie, Lindsay, and Sarah. I think that's everyone. But I'm going to hand over to my colleague and friend Angie to kind of give a little bit of background as to why we're all here.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Okay. So to provide some context for this event, more than 2 years ago, Casper and I started mapping a landscape that we didn't have a name for. And the vague language we were using for it was communities where people are finding a meaningful experience of belonging that are not religious. And we started populating this spreadsheet over the course of a year, and then we started having conversations. And we had conversations with about 25 community leaders. And at a certain point, we turned to each other and we said, we have to share what we're hearing, because what we're hearing is so consistent across communities that are doing things from supporting each other through grief and loss, to arts-based community development, to physical fitness. We are hearing about the same 6 themes. And those themes were broadly personal transformation, social transformation, accountability, creativity, purpose finding, and community. Did I forget any?
No, that was all 6.
Okay, amazing. And so we gathered a lot of that information and put it together in this little report called How We Gather. And throughout that whole process, the community that came up again and again and again was CrossFit. And so we're really thrilled to be able to have Greg here today. And also, as Casper mentioned, we're having a gathering this weekend with 50 of the leaders of the communities that were both in How We Gather and that we've come into relationship with since. And so it's really exciting to be able to kick off that weekend together with this event.
So I hardly need to introduce CrossFit because I can see the kind of muscly arms in the audience, which, trust me, is not usual for the Sperry Room. And it's a little intimidating. My boyfriend and I signed up to start CrossFit in about 3 weeks' time. So hopefully in a couple, give me a couple months, and then I'll be with you. But it's, nonetheless, for those of you who don't know the story, I'll just give you a little glimpse. Greg Glassman is the co-founder of CrossFit, a fitness movement now of 13,000 affiliate gyms, or boxes, as we should call them, and at least 4 million people working out together every week. So this is no small thing. Greg opened up the first gym in 1995 in Santa Cruz in California and started CrossFit.com, where the workout of the day is posted. So this is a workout every day that everyone all over the world does together. So you can start to see the kind of liturgical elements. That was set up in 2001. And you know, Greg speaks very often about fitness and health and even the kind of business, organizational side of the work that he does, but not often enough, I think, about the community. So that was one of the reasons he was happy to come, because even on the website, CrossFit says, CrossFit is also a community that spontaneously arises when people do these workouts together. In fact, the communal aspect of CrossFit is a key component of why it's so effective. And I recently read Greg say this in an interview, which really struck me. Because, you know, there's the stereotype, right? CrossFit, you kind of, the evangelical participants. And Greg said, well, we keep being asked, are you a cult? And after a while, I realized, maybe we are. This is an active, sweating, loving, breeding community. It's not an insult to a CrossFitter to be called part of a cult. Discipline, honesty, courage, accountability. What you learn in the gym is also training for life. CrossFit makes better people. So I thought we'd start with that. Greg, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming out. You know, is it my turn?
Yeah, it's your turn.
Okay.
You go.
I told friends, family, staff that I'd been invited to come speak at Harvard Divinity School, and I got the same response from everyone. It was 3 quick questions. What? you and why? And it was easy. What? I've been invited to Harvard Divinity School. And you, yeah, me. The why part, I'm not so sure. That one that's harder. But I think it's important that I'm here, and I really wanted to be here. I want to start with this. I thought this was brilliant. Really, really important. And if you don't have it, you gotta get one. It's how we gather. These are the authors. So they challenged me, and they also leveled a wonderful compliment. They said that CrossFit was epitomized, 3 of the themes, and that was your word, epitomized. Well, they all did. Each of your test cases epitomized, but CrossFit epitomized a combination of personal transformation, accountability, and community. And I thought about that, because when people write about us, I read it, and then kind of in the background, I'm trying to find out, I want to show that you're wrong, you don't understand. Well, you did, you got it, you nailed it. And I thought it was really cool, but something happened next, because I'm a competitive guy. I wondered why we didn't get the other 3. What about creativity, purpose finding, and social transformation? So I went through and looked at the others that had that and just hated on them. And so one of the things I want to do is I want to pick up the creativity and purpose finding and social transformation, so we're the only one that has all 6, because I think we're perfect candidates for it, I really do. So, and you said in this thing that you wanted to start a conversation with those leading the organization, so yeah, here I am, and thank you for that. You said that we hope that these organizations begin to see themselves as part of a broader cultural shift towards deeper community. Okay, yeah, I think that's happening. And I appreciate you suggesting the potential there. You said as it becomes increasingly popular to build mindful, values-driven, socially responsible organizations, we hope leaders recognize the importance of striving to master these skills in themselves, and I appreciated that too, very much so. Something's happened wonderfully here for all of us, for the CrossFit community, and the healing, I think, is at the heart of it. The wellness, the improved physical capacity, the increased bone density, the decreased body fat, the reduced resting heart rates, all those wonderful things that you can metric, and then there's even maybe the more wonderful things that you can't metric, right? Mood and confidence and all of that, and the community. But in dealing with looking at this and looking at your challenges and coming to see who we are, a couple of things hit me, and one is that those of you who know CrossFit know we're locked in legal battle with the NSCA, trying to expand it to the ACSM. And all these people are SOTA funded, and SOTA funded very handsomely. And we've become the anti-SOTA people, and we're leading the anti-SOTA movement, and we're proud to do so. So thank you.
Yeah, that deserves a round of applause.
Yeah. SOTA is a toxin. It's a pediatric toxin for sure. The science is solid on it, and the American Beverage Association is lobbying and legislating and perverting science, academics, and industry. And we're making it a corporate goal to drive the American Beverage Association and its constituent members out of the health sciences, out of sports medicine, out of fitness. And and this is me answering your hope that we would take these organizations and address other issues. So I want to get this social transformation merit badge.
Tick.
Okay. Now we got 4.
When you win, Greg, when you win.
Well, you know what, we are winning. I tweeted first about the Global Energy Balance Network on the 15th. We were the source for Anahad O'Connor's story in the New York Times. I mean, we've really tipped something over and got it rolling here. And we're gonna be filling out, we're gonna do an amicus curiae for the American Beverage Association versus the City of San Francisco, and we're working with the University of California, San Francisco Medical School, and the City of San Francisco Department of Health, and we're going to attack the soda companies. We're going on a 9-stop tour in key Senate districts in the state of California, and bringing all affiliates to bear, And we're going to support California's Senate Bill 203, which is going to put a label on the can that says that the contents of this can produce obesity, tooth decay, and diabetes. And so, they've earned that. It needs to be on there. And when it happens in California, and it will, it might take a few years, but maybe we can do it this year. But we're making 9 stops and critical Senate committee staffers that are on the fence on this issue. We got to get it out of the health committee. If it gets out of the health committee, it's going to pass. And after that, we're going to come to Massachusetts, and we're going to be looking for help from people that think that there's something wrong with the soda deal. But something else has happened, interestingly, that I want to share that I think is exactly related to this. And to do so, I'm going to introduce Dr. Axel Pfluger right here. Put your hand up, sir. Dr. Pfluger is a PhD pharmacologist. He's a board-certified heart surgeon. He's board-certified in internal medicine. He's board-certified in nephrology. He was director of diabetes treatment and chronic disease at the Mayo Clinic for 16 years. I think 14 of those years, you were #1 in the world for diabetes care and treatment. He's quickly become a dear friend. He contacted me a few months ago, and he says, I have a proposal for you that I think you're going to find very interesting. And I told him, well, Doc, you had me at nephrologist. Because our anti-soda thing has made us friends with a lot of nephrologists and very quickly. I thought maybe he had a commercial project, something that was a business proposal. I wasn't sure, but I wanted to hear, but he didn't. The news he came with, what he wanted to tell us, he gave us a crash course in chronic disease, and I'm going to give it to you now, and I hate to have to share your thoughts in front of you with everyone here, but I think I can do it reasonably well. Chronic disease is the cause of about 70% of the deaths globally. It's true of the United States, it's true of developing nations, it is a trend that's happening everywhere. So we're going to lose 1.5 million Americans next year. 1.2 of them will die prematurely from chronic disease. And this includes diabetes, obesity, coronary artery disease, Alzheimer's, and some cancers. Fair enough, Doc? Am I close? He says, here's what the science shows, and this is CDC, World Health Organization, all the science is perfectly clear on this. There are only 3 known causes to chronic disease. 3. Smoking, inactivity, and a poor diet. And he says, but that's the solution, because that's the problem, right? We got to fix that. But the problem is that it requires some lifestyle changes that people won't make in solo. They're unlikely to sitting by themselves. And what was needed, and been needed for a long time, was a fitness movement that formed community that would grow virally. That was his hope. And he found it and he came to us. And so, again, for my social transformation merit badge, I'm gonna harness the energies of our community, all my lovely affiliates and trainers here, and we're gonna take on chronic disease headlong. And we're gonna shift the discussion from how many affiliates will there be someday to me trying to, I have no sense of that. I'm not trying to build affiliates. If there was never another one, I'm okay with that. People don't have the interest, they don't have the interest. It's not, my soul isn't tied to how many affiliates we have. We're gonna do this work. We're gonna make this difference. And where the question reframes is now it becomes, we need more gyms until the chronic disease is gone. How long would it take to reduce that number? Instead of 70% of deaths, make it 30, and how many, and I do believe, and the doctors help me see this now, I've said it before, but now I really feel it, that the CrossFit gyms are perfect. They're perfect chronic disease, fighters. I mean, it's an ideal setup. I wouldn't change the exercise. I wouldn't change the dietary recommendations. I wouldn't change the camaraderie, the community, the support network, nor the fees. It all is just working perfectly well. And so, Dr. Axel Pfluger, that's exciting to me. Now, purpose, the other merit badge that we didn't get. Clearly, with the goal of doing what we want in fighting soda and fighting chronic disease, and look, what we're fighting is the net result and the single largest purveyor of it, right? But in the everyday box, what happens, my gyms, affiliates, hands up? Yeah, I know almost all of you. Let me tell you something about these people. They are having an impact on their membership that very few professionals will ever have. It is profound, and we impact every aspect of our clients' being, every aspect, physical, psychological, social, emotional, spiritual. It's all impacted, and all impacted favorably in a way that your psychiatrist, your physician, your dentist, your doctor, your lawyer, clergy are unlikely to match. Unlikely to match. So I know what it's like to unlock those doors and have that impact on people. And the purpose, I was explaining to Angie, that it accumulates. You know, your first 6 months with your doors open, there's, you know, you get a little weight loss, and, you know, people are feeling better. But with our affiliates that have had their doors open 5 years, there's about an 85% chance that you've had a 100-pound weight loss. And that's a miracle of a transformation. Talk about personal transformation. That's one that hardly anyone could imagine that hadn't been through it themselves. And then the last merit badge, creativity, that's going to be a hard one. But I do think that there's enormous opportunity for creativity, and I want to find better and better ways to engage the community and do the kinds of things that we need to do given the goals that we have. I came up with one just recently. The people at UC San Francisco Medical School, and we were there at the UC San Francisco Medical School Department of Public Health Global Health Initiatives Division. And that includes Dr. Lustig, the esteemed pediatric endocrinologist. But we were there working with them, and they were explaining to us the effort at UC San Francisco to remove soda from the broader campus. They have 65 buildings and 30,000 employees, and they were selling $5 million worth of soda pop every year. It took 2 years for these people out of the School of Medicine to get the soda out, but it's gone. You cannot buy a Coke at any of the hospitals, any of the units, any of the dorms, anywhere. There is no place where you can buy soda now. And they're really proud of that. I talked to my pediatrician. I think this is creative. I talked to her about it. She went and told Harry Rady, who is it's Rady's Children's Hospital in San Diego. They're huge, a lot of locations, big buildings. And he's ready to take soda out of his hospitals. And so I'm gonna have this pediatrician travel around to every children's hospital in the United States, and we're gonna get the soda out. And that's such an easy thing to do, such a fun thing to do, I think, one at a time. And our argument goes like this. I mean, this was the simple discussion we had with Dr. Rady, that it's hard to believe that sugar is a pediatric toxin when you can buy it in the cafeteria at the Children's Hospital. But it is a pediatric toxin, and so you can't sell it anymore. And I don't think anyone's going to fight us on that. I think we're going to be able to get that done. And for those that don't want to play, we'll just run full-page ads and explain to everyone what they're doing, right?
There's the accountability.
Yeah, right. Hey, accountability was interesting on there. You know, it's just, and again, I'm just trying to have that conversation with you. But you would talk about oneself and others to define goals. It's interesting. For us, the ability is a little different. We've quantified the performance, and that has an accountability in the sense of accounting, that I can give specific force, distance, and time. I can give numbers to your efforts. You did this workout, and you took this much time, and the accountability looks like, no, Casper, that was 20 reps, not 21. And where were you yesterday?
I'll be thrilled if I get 20, let me tell you.
Oh, you're going to do fine. You're going to do fine. Where are you going? Where are you going to join?
Well, now that I know all the
Yeah, they
affiliates
might
are
be
here,
here.
I'm going to see who gives me the best offer.
Yeah. What else?
Well, Angie, I think you had the first question.
Oh, sure. Well, following on what you just said, I had a good conversation with Brian right before we were up here, and he was saying how in the CrossFit boxes, you're not trying to change beliefs, but you are changing behaviors.
Yes.
And you and I were talking about belief a bit, and the way that belief operates in religious communities, in your view, and the way that it functions at CrossFit. So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about the status of belief.
Yeah, I would have the client that has me sitting down. There's the type that you'd have to explain about delta-5 desaturation, omega-6 fatty acid metabolism, flow charts, give the detailed justification for everything you're doing. And that's the kind of person, do you have a card? No, well, let me get your number down. And you run into them 6 months later and you have to do the same lecture. And it's like, it's never going anywhere. They're never going to come to the gym. So after a while, when someone would say to me, what's CrossFit? I'd be like, well, what do you do on Monday morning? I want to show them. And I want to say as little as possible, other than just getting to know you and have that interaction and get you moving. But what's really interesting is that in our community, what happens is that the rationale, the belief, the understanding comes on the trail of the results. And you don't have to do any twisting or convincing at that point. So once a guy's lost 50 pounds of fat and picked up 20 pounds of muscle, he feels a self-anointed expert on omega-6 fatty acid metabolism flow charts and inflammatory versus non-inflammatory eicosanoids, and they actually start lecturing on that stuff, which is really funny because no one ever came to the table because of that. And the talking's too much. And so what is CrossFit? Well, it's a constantly varied high-intensity functional movement. And if you say that to someone in an elevator, you're blowing it because it really conveys nothing.
Right.
But once you've been CrossFitting for a few years, it has deep meaning to you. You understand, and the same people do the same thing. They didn't come into the explanations. They got tricked by a friend, lured by a trainer, someone saying, just come with me. Or then there's those that I want a body like hers or like his. I'm seeing what's going on. I never liked that girl, but look at her. Wow, I'm going to the gym. Some of that stuff. I don't know where I was going.
Well, I think you leave us at the point where I want to jump in, which is, if I was someone who was thinking critically about what you were just saying, and okay, so, people are changed physically and they build community and they find, might find a purpose, maybe taking action around the soda issue. Let's say, my mum passes away. Am I going to call the trainer? Like how much of church can be replicated, and is that even what you're trying to do?
There's no attempt, and it's there in a huge way. And with 13,000 affiliates, we've seen a lot of tragedy. We've had affiliates. I've had 2 affiliates murdered in their gyms. We've had a couple of suicides. It's the nature of 13,000 small businesses, right? We had an affiliate in Hawaii that hung herself on her pull-up bar, been troubled with depression her whole life, and the membership hit us up like, we don't know what to do, And so we bought new equipment and rented them a space and set them up down the road, and it was really neat to be in a position to do that. But no, this community's tight. The tribes are closely allied, but within the tribe is where all the love is. We had an affiliate where the trainer, as a 45-year-old, had a 45-year-old female had some kind of spinal infarct that left her with a significant amount of paralysis. And it happened while she was driving. She crashed her car and was hurt there. By the time we found out what was going on, the membership had gone to school and picked up her 15-year-old son. We were there at the hospital. They had bought her a new car, and they wanted us to come out when she came back into the gym. No, this is and all my affiliates, everyone here knows exactly what I'm talking about. I think it's something we love and something we appreciate, but we take it for granted because it's just who we are. There's a powerful selective force on the community, on the 4 million people that do CrossFit. The holy grail for my industry has, I think, always been that 5 minutes a day and without really getting your heart rate up or any sweat, you're going to get fit, right? The Thigh Master notion, while watching TV. And well, it's BS. It doesn't work that way. To get supremely fit it's extremely hard. It's extremely uncomfortable. It's, for the most part, it's fun only when it's over. That's the truth of it. And even if you don't come into the door understanding that, you learn that. It is the physical domain, the physical province is the ideal place to teach tougher lessons. The things I can teach you in the gym, you know, if you have trouble making it to the gym and trying some pull-ups, you're going to find emotional control, spiritual control, intellectual control. You know, I think the journey to self-mastery begins in the physical province, because that is the easiest place both to impart essential lessons of success, and it's the easiest place to absorb them. Just for like kids, I mean, that's what PE class should be about. Kids, about them getting activity and learning about success, learning how to achieve, right? And where does achievement come from? Blood, sweat, tears, and other bodily fluids, you know, and lots of frustration, exasperation. And the CrossFit community, the CrossFitters, they're pre-selected for some of that, I believe, but certainly over time they get it beat into them. And so a CrossFitter is more likely to want to study physics than, say, you know, pick your favorite fun major at the party school. And they're more likely to, they're not looking for the easy way out, ever, because they know that good things only come through the hard way, and so all the thieves are gone. We don't have any thieves in our community. Every year at the game, someone loses a wallet. Every year at the game, the wallet is found. The cards are there, and so is the money. So when I heard this time, I tell the ski, I want to know when someone's lost the wallet, because I want to tell them it's going to show up. And it does. It does every time. We can leave valuables in our gym. Any of your members have keys? A third of my membership had keys. Anyone that wanted a key to the gym could have it. Yeah, the thieves are gone. The people looking for shortcuts are gone. It's a beautiful community. I'm really proud of everybody.
Awesome. Well, I know there are lots of questions in the room, so let's open it up. I'm going to ask if Lou has the roving microphone. Thank you so much, Lou. Well, you're right next to Lou, so let's start with you. What a fantastic idea.
Is this on?
Just give us a second for the mic.
You're talking a lot about I'm a CrossFitter for 3 years. And and I find more than physical, I find it almost like a meditation because of the counting that we do. It's 1 hour of the day that I don't think about anything but what I'm doing there, because you have to count.
Yeah.
No, it's true. You know more than anybody, because if you don't count 4 push-ups and 16 and how many rounds, you're lost.
Yeah.
For me, I go every day at 6:30 in the morning, and I make myself take a day off once a week. But for me, it's like going to a church or something. I go in the snow, in the ice. It's fabulous. I'm the oldest one in my box.
Thank you for that. They love you too, don't they? I know they do.
But isn't it part of your? I mean, why did you do it with the numbers and the counting? Did you get a purpose?
No. Yeah, I just got lucky. I never had, like the 21, 15, and 9 kind of things, and
We count all the time.
Yeah. Look, human performance is movement. All movement has if you're gonna make sense, if you're gonna talk sensibly about it, you need to resolve it to the fundamental units of kinematics. You have no choice: force, distance, and time. To do that correctly requires counting, or we won't be able to resolve the thing down to kinematic fundamentals. So you got to be able to count reps. It would help to know what you weigh, and it'd be nice to know what the bar and the plates weighed. It'd be nice to know what the range of motion was on the activity, and how long did it take. And I'm out of things that matter. And so the numerical part is an essential feature. Look what we've replaced. We're replacing bodybuilding and or long distance effort. The long distance effort was always judged, how many miles did you do last week? And check that out. It was, I ran 15 miles last week. Was that over 15 hours? 40 hours? I still don't have any valuable information. It's kinematically incomplete. And the bodybuilders are over there measuring biceps in their waists and stuff, and that's not we're not doing physics there yet. So both those things were technically, scientifically profoundly misguided. And so and the result of that, two things happen. One is that you get better results, and the other thing is you have to count. Yeah. Thank you for what you're doing.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. So,
What's your name?
excuse me, my name's Karen.
Hi, Karen.
So a lot of criticism of CrossFit sort of entails its risk of injury, this timed notion to what is very high intensity, highly functional movement. And of course, I know how important form is, things like that, but I'm wondering if you think that such a strong community can play a role in maybe pushing someone past their limits. And in this competitive nature, do you think that someone might try so hard to fit in that they get a herniated disc? Things like that. What role do you think community plays in that?
I think that's entirely possible. I think it's also likely that on Thanksgiving Day you can grab the basketball and go in the front yard with a bunch of cousins and uncles and someone will break a leg, And it would be the same thing. You overdid it, But the truth of the matter is this, that we have done 50 seminars at Fort Stewart for the 3rd Infantry Division. And the number of people that we have run through in our Spec Ops, SOCOM, and other communities, this program has been implemented officially in scores of military organizations. And I'll just use the language of General Abrams, who just got his 4th star and has 1.5 million men in his command. He says, we use CrossFit to fix people. And that's exactly right. Now, can someone get hurt through an activity? Of course. But I don't have the injury rate of the marathon. I don't have the injury rate of a triathlon. We've had no EAHE deaths. I'm not seeing anything like what we see in football, No, we're saving lives and saving a lot of them. 350,000 Americans are going to die from sitting on the couch next year, from sitting on the couch. That's dangerous. The TV's dangerous. Squatting isn't. So.
Thank you.
I just want to pick up on the military thing, and then let's go.
And I'm gonna add one thing to that too. Someone said to me, I had a reporter, they go, well, I don't believe, and I know you're going to say all this, but I don't think CrossFit is for everyone. And I said, okay. But this is true. It's for anyone.
What do you mean by that difference, Greg?
Everyone means that the lazy people that want the short path, they won't be there. But I don't care if you congenital quadruple amputation in Kyle Maynard, or we've seen it all. If this is something you want to do, we're there for you. We're there for you.
And I want to emphasize what really struck us when we were kind of researching the landscape was the way in which people were bringing their kids to their box, or the way that different workouts of the day were named after soldiers who had died in battle. So there's all of these things that you would expect to see in a church in some way, remembering the dead through some sort of ritual, intergenerational community. As you said, if your car breaks down, people had stories of meeting their partner in the box and moving to be closer to the box because of that. The parallels are so striking.
And the first place they go when they move to a new place is to go find the box in that local area.
I had a young lady that tell me that she was an Army daughter, and she had tragically been to 4 high schools, and she said that the moving used to be really hard on her. But she says now what she does is when she finds out she's going to move, she finds the box she's going to go to and goes right in there. And she was within a week, it feels like I've lived here my whole life. Here's a powerful testimony to how the fitness is maybe the glue that's holding everyone together, but there's something even more cohesive, even a stronger glue than the fitness. One of my favorite CrossFitters is, who's our artist in the wheelchair? I can't believe I'm blanking on his name because he's a childhood friend. Tommy Hollenstein. He's a quadriplegic, but he's a CrossFitter, and he can kind of use one hand. And from what he saw at the games, he's building an apparatus to work that hand, and he's all excited about CrossFit, And he can just do this. He paints with his wheelchair, and does amazing things. An electric wheelchair, but he's as much one of us as Rich Froning is, And I love the idea that I've got an artist that's doing corporate art for us. He painted our floor in our main office with his wheelchair, and his dog's footprints are in there that does that's his companion, his service dog. And I think it's great that if the spirit's there, even the physical part doesn't matter.
That's a quote. We had a gentleman in the green t-shirt over here. And thanks for bearing with us with the mic. It just means we can capture it all on video.
Hey, I'm Chris. Thanks.
Hi, Chris.
Lots of things get cool very fast for a short period of time and then flame out. What is going to have to change for CrossFit to be sustainable long term?
I have no idea, and on some level, and my staff will tell you, I don't care either.
Why don't you care?
Look, I've got 13,000 affiliates. The first one was someone else's idea. The second one was someone else's idea. The third one was someone else's idea. Now what I'm going to do is just not screw it up. And so what staff does is we shoot down destructive ideas all day long. Most of them have some kind of revenue stream tied to them. Something that I'm going to do to you affiliates or the trainers to squeeze some revenue. And those ideas just don't quit coming. But I want to make the point again that we're the stewards of something that was quite spontaneous and natural. And I'm perfectly happy with what it's doing. I mean, the miracle will be surviving this growth. And so I certainly don't want any more. And I don't need a flood of, I don't think that a mass conversion event that brought a flood of new talent into the boxes would do my affiliates any good. I think you absorb them at a natural rate that preserves the culture, and you're actually, you don't want all newbies in the gym. There's not much teleological in what we're doing. There really isn't. Yeah, I'm not a traditional business guy. Say something, Chris. What are you thinking? What's going on? I hear you.
I mean, you
Can you use the microphone? Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a better way to put it is, if you feel like there's this unbelievable impact, what, and maybe the short answer is nothing, what are you doing as an organization or as a leader to make sure that you accomplish that impact that you do want to have? Because I understand, like, you don't care if there's 26,000 versus 13,000, but you don't want soda. So you do want to accomplish something long term.
Oh, you know what? What's happening in the boxes is nothing less than a miracle of physiology and community. That I'm perfectly convinced of. And we're the fastest growing chain on earth. And so largely what I want to do is nothing, I can't imagine it growing faster without being dangerous, and I can't imagine more healing than what we're currently seeing. We got one of the only services you ever offer where my affiliates, the smart ones, do not even get close to describing the benefit that's about to come your way. If I gave you the list of things that I know is going to happen, you wouldn't believe it. And so I don't. I wait until you come tell me, and then I act like I'm surprised. So I think, look, maybe we're doing everything wrong, but I think everything's perfect.
Lady just behind you, yeah.
And you get that, Chris, a smart idea could sink us. And especially, it keeps getting described to me that I could own the supplement industry or equipment. It's just ours for the taking. All I have to do is require that my affiliates use CrossFit branded gear. I'd lose some, and I'd sell a whole lot of CrossFit branded gear, but you know what? It wouldn't be as good as Rogue gear, and it would hurt Rogue, and that would make it a sin. And so I'm not going to do that. And so maybe in that respect, we're a little bit different. But you know what? I've got an essential relationship with Rogue, and I don't, as far as I know, we don't have a contract. An essential relationship with them. That's it. They're an affiliate, by the way. They're an affiliate. It was a guy that was welding equipment in his garage for his gym, and then started doing it for other gyms. Now it's a $350 million a year business. Idea like that.
But this is really important because you're actively choosing to forfeit huge amount of profit to maintain the rigor and the special something that is in the community. And I met Greg when he was speaking at the business school, and it was all about the case in terms of, when I mean, the whole background is a little hazy for me, but essentially where you had...
That's why you had the co-founder.
Right, exactly. The co-founder situation where you kind of had to aggressively buy them out at, real financial risk, but doing it because they had a different vision for selling all sorts of products, as you were mentioning, which would undercut what was sacred.
We were in negotiation for a purchase of my ex's half of the community property, CrossFit Inc., and we got hoodwinked into a sudden appearance of Anthos, the venture capital group, and basically what we had was 3 weeks to raise $20 million, which was an absolute impossibility. But it turns out it's not if you're willing to pay back $36 million. you can get 20 overnight,
I want to get to this lady's question.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Christy, and something I think about as a coach a lot is how to create culture within my gym. My affiliate's a little bit different. It's all women here in the Boston area, and I know each affiliate has kind of a different culture or like stereotype to
Sure.
them. And I think about how that builds different community. I'm wondering, from your perspective, what do you think about when each affiliate is thinking about their culture? How should we approach that so that we build the strongest community we can?
Christine, I don't want to call what I'm going to tell you a recommendation. I'm not going to go that far because you know more about the culture in your box than I'll ever know. But I can speak to what I did in my box, and I can also tell you that I think that's what almost everyone else is doing that's finding success. My clients were my friends, and I blurred that professional distinction. Like, the beautiful thing about being a trainer is that you can blur that distinction. The things that would be wrong to do as a shrink, an attorney, or an accountant, like we do. I mean, my trainers date their clients. Sorry, but it happens. They marry them too and have kids with them, But I lived and hung out and breathed and played. We would do weekend bike rides every Sunday. We had a bike ride that was about 7 miles and very steep, and it was the least capable would get up there, and I think it was 45 minutes, and the most capable in half that. But at the end, when we all met at the top, we went down the hill, the 7 miles. That happened very quickly, and we all went to a local Mexican restaurant. It was margarita time, and that was the Sunday deal, And I'd say the turnout might have been 50, 60 people. We just crushed this restaurant. But it was a, give it your name, a congregation, a club, a community. These are friends. And I don't think that can be improved on. You listen to the people talk about the relationships they have in their box, and they're not wishing for something different. It's happening already. And so I imagine, I'm going to guess you already have the answer, right?
Maybe.
Are
yeah.
you hanging with them? I mean, do you stuff? Are these like your sisters? Are these your best friends?
Yeah, some of them. Definitely.
Yeah.
Lou,
I have
I'm
a couple
gonna
of them sitting next to me.
forgive me. Lou, would you be willing? There's a man at the very back in that corner, which is a little bit of a workout, but he's very keen. And after that, I'm going to come to a particular Presbyterian minister who's sitting over there, who I'm just interested to see what he has to say.
I'm not a Presbyterian minister, but I'm a 2006 grad of this institution, and CrossFitter since 2009. And about 4:07, I was sitting in a coffee shop across the street, actually in Mass Ave, and I saw that my box owner, Brian, who's sitting over there, had just posted that he was going to be here, and I discovered, and I think I was here by 4:12, because it's my profit at my seminary. However, having said that, I was never a very religious man until I did CrossFit, and it was problematic because I'm also a Jesuit historian. I studied the Jesuits, and I could really never really get into the spiritual exercises until I said a wedding. And I now am able to see how that structure functions in a way that I wasn't able to do before, because for some reason I'm a sort of barbarian when it comes to religion, and I see that for other people, the symphony is really quite incredible. But, I like to observe it, but I don't quite get in the same level as some other people do. However, through physical exercise, I'm capable of doing it. That's a long way around of saying that I have one concern. And that concern, it comes also from sort of American religious history, and that has to do with competition between local churches. And the notion that, you get the, religion in America is so vibrant because churches have competed for a long time. And community within boxes, I've been to member a long time, for 2-3 years, a member in 3 different boxes in 3 different states, countries. And, it's been a really important thing for me to join as soon as I've arrived at a new location. However, I've noticed, and perhaps not as much here, it seems like relations are more amicable between boxes locally. But this is my biggest concern. In the last 2 locations that I was at, there was little love lost for the other competing local box. And that's, I think, in the long term, I'm wondering, what can you do about that? Is there an institutional fix? Because people are making a living, and that's the sort of local situation where the profit motive comes in. And that's my sort of biggest concern over the long term. It's great when you're in your own box. It's amazing when you find a new box somewhere elsewhere in the world or in the country. But the trickiest situation, I think, is that just the relationships between the local affiliates. What can you do about that in the long term?
Let me just start by acknowledging the problem. I see it. It's interesting. My Hawaiian affiliates hate each other. Probably shouldn't have said that, but that's what it seems like to me. We keep having to settle Hawaiian affiliate nonsense. Ones in Santa Monica are got something kind of epic going on too. In Edmonton, Canada, they honor each other's memberships, and it's working for everybody. Right? Yeah, but you know what? Like, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. The little guy gets a flood of people. The guy that's overcrowded gets some reduce and some breathing room, and it really has been good for everybody. That's how I would roll. I liked other trainers around me, always. There was no better way for me to show how good I was than to train next to anyone else. And so when I had a landlord tell me, don't worry, I won't put a fitness gym in this complex, I'm like, put nothing but that in here, And if I can't take your clients and take them they watch me train and go, I'm not getting what I could. If I can't take your clients, I need to learn something from you. And if I do, you need to learn something from me. But I can't imagine fearing the competition. I also know this is true. Everyone, you're very rare to get into a new town. I'm going to find the CrossFit gym. That's a veteran, Your boxes are full of people that were drug in by the other people that were in your box. That's where they come from. People drag their friends and family and loved ones, bosses, employees. They bring them in. And a gym will max out at, a couple 100, 300 people. You're really, really busy. You got a lot going on. You have a very serious business underway here. And so yes, how many, and everyone in there was brought in. And so you can have as many boxes, I think, as you could Boy Scout troops or even churches. And there would be it's just a poverty of spirit that would have you hating the guy across the street, But I'll tell you too, I've known so many examples where there's friendship and camaraderie and a healthy competition, entirely different spirit with the guys across the street. We have an affiliate in San Diego that's a church affiliate, and then there's the non-church one across the street. And they compete and play, and it's really fun. But there's, I've heard this story. There's so many boxes in my town, and they're not qualified. They're not doing good training. They're getting people hurt, and they're really busy, and that's why I don't have any clients. We go and look, and what we find, first of all, I'll just tell you what happened. The person's just no fun and no one wants to be around them, okay? They've learned to blame other people for their mistakes. They think that the guy that's really popular is popular because he's hurting people. You know, no. What we see when we hear that, it's a wildly overestimated sense of your own capacities. You're generally no fun to be around, and it's probably best if you just didn't stay in business, you know? I mean, that happens.
I'm not going to make a parallel with ministers and their colleagues at all.
You can't help but make it, huh? Yeah.
Burns, I want to come to you.
My name is Burns, and I am indeed a Presbyterian pastor, I confess, right here. And did not know a lot about CrossFit until Casper and Angie began educating me. I'm fascinated by it all. And I, too, am fascinated by the merit badges. You know, I want those as well, I guess.
All 6.
And it may be that my question has something to do with the interconnection. I know that as a pastor, I'm very, very interested in how individuals develop and their growth. And I'm not talking about some of the same metrics you've got, but still growth, you know, and their own benefit. I'm also very, very much concerned with how they care for each other. And I hear you talk about the community that happens in these boxes. There is this other piece where I'm very, very interested in their growth and their care for others that goes to neighbor, you know, any neighbor, whoever that might be, you know, the story of the Good Samaritan. It sounds like you share some of that concern in your heart. I am curious about the connections you see between personal development, caring for people in your tribe, caring for others not in your tribe. I mean, I hear you, you know, commenting on where you see it or where you don't see it. What are the connections? What are the connections you see in your own box or others? Like, you know, my development. What is that? How's that connected to my community? How does that make possible further or get in the way of love of neighbor? I'm just interested in those connections.
You know, there are 2 common testimonials I'd get. One is I have a rocky relationship, and since I've been CrossFitting, we've patched it up. It's good. It'd been on a bad path, and now it's on a great one, thank you. And I'd get about an equal number of, I was in a bad relationship, and I finally left, and I wouldn't have done it without CrossFit. And in both instances, it sounds like a really good thing has happened. I'm sorry, in the corner, what was your name?
Larry.
Larry?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was hearing from you a kind of refined version of my belief that the more advanced, most important lessons can best be taught in the physical province. I think you did that to yourself, perhaps. I have operators that tell me of worst case scenarios. I'm talking about spec ops guys, you know, Delta Force SEALs, talking about being on ops where things are going just wrong. And they are writing me to let me know I thought of CrossFit in you, and it made me laugh. And I've heard that so many times. That there's something there. There's some kind of stress inoculation that comes out of the heart. So I'd expect there's a hormonal component to this. You know, the doctor might even have a. Do you hear this, Axel? You know, what are the relationships between a healthy body and a fully functioning brain? It has to be immense, right? It can't be that this is the only organ system that it isn't dramatically enhanced through activity. In fact, we know it's not.
Yeah, I think you alluded earlier, the thieves are gone. You know, I mean, I think that speaks for itself. I mean, you know, it makes people, in a sense, you know, grow in good attributes. And, you know, I can't comment how that reaches out for, you know, the non-members or, you know, but I think that is a strong testimony. And I think what I'm curious, and I think we want to measure that, you know, the mind development of people and the spiritual satisfaction. So I'm curious to know, you know, when somebody starts to become a CrossFit member, or to start it, like, you know, Casper may do in 3 weeks, you know, what are the goals from the starting point, okay, on different levels, not just physical fitness, but also mind fitness, you know, emotional intelligence, you know, personal satisfaction, social satisfaction, professional satisfaction. I think it would be very interesting to know how all these measures, they are individual and they may be different by each individual person, but how they change, you know, if a person is in a structure exercise, you know, program and they feel better, you know, medically they sleep better. You know, I hear that from my patients. They sleep better, they lose weight, they become better spouses, they become better parents, you know, they have more time. Even so, they have to carve out an hour from their day to do the exercise, but they say, I hear that from many people, they get more achieved in the remaining hours than they do it without the exercise. And I think, you know, that's fascinating. I think the biggest challenge, what I see as a clinician, is for people to make that step to start an exercise program. And I think, you know, if somebody does it in their own house, you know, going on a treadmill, you know, they depending solely on themselves, you know, and they can then, you know, have that struggle. Are they going to end up on the couch watching TV, you know, or are going to go on the treadmill watching TV, you know? And I think, you know, what Craig mentions, you know, this camaraderie and the team, that's kind of a, you know, we mentioned yesterday peer pressure, which has a bit of negative, you know, sound to it, but I think it's more a motivation. You know, there's other people, they want to see you, you know, and they may reach out when you're not showing up. And it's
they will reach out.
They will.
Yeah, right. But I don't see it, you know, with the negative connotation as a cult, but I see it as a, you know, inspiration to help each other grow on the strong attributes. And I think that's easier achieved in a team or in a community than if a person is all on by themselves.
Burns, I have a parlor trick of sorts that I've encouraged my affiliates to perform for their new members. And what you tell him or her is that I want you to go home tonight and I write down everything that would make you a better person. And don't let it just be blood pressure and cholesterol and skinny, or not the gym kind of stuff, but reach deep into some things that really matter to you. And then you tell them, and I'm never going to look at it, and no one else is either. This is just for you. But I want you to write down a list of things and take a half hour and think all those things that could make you a better person. And you're going to hide it, and you're going to do CrossFit for 6 months, and you're going to go look at it again, and I want you to give yourself a score. And what I know is that anything you put on there, if it made any kind of sense at all, if it's anything that we would all think, yeah, that'd make you better, like a better dad, you know, a better boss, you know, kinder to my neighbors. If those things on your list, you're gonna say, it's happening. And so exercise performed in a community at high intensity makes people better. And I don't get to be the judge. You can for yourselves. And I know all my affiliates sitting here know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's pretty cool. There's something magical there. We are in possession of something more profound and more impactful than was in the design or in the creation of this. You know, look, all I knew was that the whole world was working out wrong. I didn't know what the price was for not working out correctly. We're only coming to terms with that now by taking several million people and putting them on an entirely different path. And what's really interesting to me is that there's a divergence of CrossFitters and those that don't. And with each passing year, the CrossFitters are getting fitter and fitter, and the sedentary are getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And pretty soon, you're going to be able, from a mile away, just sort the CrossFitters out in a Disneyland. By the way, Maggie and the kids were just at Disneyland, and they saw like 6 or 7 Rogue shirts, and the Rogue shirts were outnumbering the CrossFit shirts at Disneyland. We put our brand on the people, and so we can sit at a Starbucks or a Whole Foods and just ID CrossFitters. Look, there's one her. look at the shoes. You got sores on the hands. That's my drill right there. And the body's unmistakable. And this is all new. Stuff that's never happened before.
Greg, if you'll humor me for this as we move into our last half hour, I just want to, we've been using a lot of language that has a religious relationship, right? Congregation and sin and miracles and healing, and the one that I've heard come up the most is spirit. Poverty of spirit, spiritual transformation. And I'm just wondering for you, given the sort of elephant in the room of CrossFit as church, ? A lot of people, they hear church and they hear God. And not speaking for CrossFit, for you, when you say spirit, what do you mean?
For me, it's a bucket that I'm going to put all those things that are hugely important that I can't quantify, prove, demonstrate. It's the stuff that really matters. I gave you the example early. I can't. There's no mathematical model, and I believe there's no physical model that will support your belief in having free will. But if you can't function sanely without it, and my love for my kids and my wife. I mean, those are I can't prove that to you. Here's the CrossFit line. This is a little bit harsh, but hey, it's who we are. I said, if we're going to have a debate on free speech, on the First Amendment, I'm coming with a rifle. I can't give you a logical reason why it is that a person should have the right to speak their mind freely. It's just, it's like free will. It's like loving my daughter. Those are the most important things in our world. They're more important than the stuff I can measure. It's more important than my cholesterol. It's more important than my Fran time. And so, what do we, and I think this is the problem. I think this is where your unaffiliated kind of thing came from, that you're like, man, there's stuff hugely important to all of us that what they speak to your refinement as a human being, to your culture, and your kindness. I mean, so much is so important. And we don't have any way to measure it, or it's even hard for us to talk about, right? You do things like ask, what do you mean by spirit? What do you mean? It's tough.
Come to Divinity School, we'll talk about it. I want to get some questions from this side of the room.
I was wondering, I was asked Jeff Kane, we have our professor, and we were talking about Divinity School, and I go, and I think I know what divine is. And I said, there ought to be a sublimity school for studying the sublime,
Dean Hempton, take that on board for the record. Yes, just over here, lady in the black top.
Thank you so much. My name is Annie Selleck. I'm a member of Forever CrossFit, as well as a Catholic minister and a theologian, and I study the church and what is the church. So this is my jam. But one of the things that I've been writing on this and been trying to think, and the thing that keeps floating in my head that I can't quite figure out the parallels or not parallels is the connection between Sabbath and rest, right? So rest is a very important part of CrossFit. Your muscles need to rest, need to grow. Sabbath is also a deeply theological concept. Depending on the religion, depends how deep that goes. So I would just like to hear your thoughts on that. I don't even have a specific question, but what does, when I say Sabbath and rest and CrossFit, what happens in your brain about that?
Listen, I would think that they may have common origins. Right? Fair enough. But I don't know. I'm kind of a Hayekian in the sense that I would be loath to disrupt effective organizations and cultural traditions. We could find out why by getting rid of it, right? I know what happens when you don't rest.
I think that's already happened. I mean.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting to me, though. I'm intrigued, but I don't see them as different.
Can you talk a little bit more about?
What's
because the theological. What would you think is the theological difference? Like how is resting from working out different from Sabbath time from the everyday?
I'm not sure how they're different, and I do think there's a common origin. I remember one of the things...
I gave a good answer.
Yeah, I think you did a great answer. When I first joined CrossFit, then one of the things that baffled me the most is that hardly anyone has classes on Sundays. And I looked to the right, and the minister bells start going off of like, okay, well, I don't think this is so people can go to church. Why is this? But I also think like your example about the Sunday bike rides, I think a lot of boxes have similar things for that. So whether intentional or not, I think the way that's being used in CrossFit communities is this sense of being together, building community in a different way other than the typical way that we're together. So I think that would also, it would be almost the exact opposite parallel in churches, where you think Sundays are times where you come together for worship, and then you're together for religious education or men's group or women's group or Bible or this or that. So I think it's similar ways of how are we together, how do we gather together, what is different about this, but how do we still build community in that and express who we are?
You know, it's always cool to decontextualize group relationships and get the group outside of where it does its group thing always. And so it's really fun to get 12 people in a car and go to Moab with mountain bikes and do something, you know, get away from home, and we live that with staff. You know, I've got a couple of dozen staff that I've been to 80 countries with.
I just got to say, when you walked in, there was like a posse, Greg with the 12. It was.
These are my best friends on earth, and we've been.
That's the first apostle analogy I've heard.
Yeah.
What does that make you? I don't want to be Judas.
Yeah, where's the Judas? Oh God.
I think I have an answer for that. For your thing is, remember that church in many ways has now become a weekly thing, right? There's one day of Sabbath, but CrossFit's like 6 days of Sabbath. I mean, we're breaking bread together, so to speak, 6 days, 5 days a week. You know, we're in the box together working out, and you almost need. We get the opposite. Our Sabbath, our rest days to get out of the box and maybe spend a little time resting or with yourself, or maybe your nuclear family, or maybe some other friends outside of the box. But it's, I mean, you do need some time for yourself. And so to me, the rest days and the days off from the box, and I'm in the box, I've been at CrossFit for 10 years, but I'm in a box for the first time. I belong to a box. And it's a neat experience. You know, Halloween, we're all dressed up and doing workouts on a Saturday in our Halloween costumes. But, you know, we also need some time off from that to take care of things at home and all that. And so it feels to me those rest days are the time that we need to maybe recharge away from all of our, you know, the people that we're communing with every day and sweating with and working with. And, you know, you need a little time for yourself. And so it doesn't strike me as odd at all.
You know what's interesting? I don't know that I would recommend anything 7 days a week.
That's probably
It's kind of interesting,
yeah.
you know?
I want to get a couple more questions in. We've got, great, fantastic. Let's go to this gentleman over here.
Hi, my name is Jim, and I'm an older person. And that's my perspective that's the perspective of my question. My sense is that most older people going to church these days go with a different purpose than the few younger people that go to church, that remain going to church these days. And my other sense is that never having been to CrossFit box, it's probably flipped. There's probably a lot of younger folks and very few older folks. So my question is this: if an older person comes to CrossFit, what are they being offered, or what are they looking for? What are they looking for?
Let me start with our understanding of the physiology and the exercise response. What we teach at the level ones is that the needs of Olympic athletes and your grandparents, they differ by degree, not kind. One wants functional dominance to win gold medals, and the other wants functional competence to stay out of the nursing home. And I use the same exercises to get you a gold medal that I'd use to keep you out of a nursing home in 15 years. And that would be squat, deadlift, etc. These movements are built into your DNA. They were invented by no man. No one can say, look at this, I invented this. No, you're lying, you just stood up. No one invented picking something up off the ground. No one invented putting something overhead. And yet, if you don't do CrossFit, you don't stand up normally, correctly, the way that you were designed to. You won't pick things up off the ground. It's very unlikely that the approach by which you pick something off the ground is mechanically sound, is the match that it could be, should be, and used to be for the genetic hardwiring that makes those movements part and parcel of who we are. Your functional independence is the most important thing you have. And it's more important than not getting heart disease, not getting cancer. You know, the horrible thing about cancer and heart disease, it would be that loss of your independence. Loss of life is one thing, but loss of life is certain. We're all gonna die, everyone here. What you don't wanna do, and I think this is where I'm afraid medical science was taking us, that one day we're gonna leave to be 150, but you still go to the nursing home when you're 75. So you got 75 years of Oprah and, you know, Jell-O on plastic spoons. I'm not interested. Theodore Dalrymple, the physician and editor for the Wall Street Journal, years ago, pre-internet, was writing that he'd been studying centenarians, and he said the amazing thing about them was what remarkable health they're in, and yet their life expectancy is 2.5 years. And what happens to centenarians is they're remarkably free of chronic disease, but they experience an accelerated demise. And what he explained is that that's the best case scenario. And so my goal for you would be to get you eventually, take as long as we can, to an accelerated demise. I'd like you to turn 100 and be in perfect health. That's as good as it gets. What Dalrymple also said in that article is that it can only happen through diet and exercise. It wasn't going to happen through medical discovery or advancement. And so you need to squat, sir. You need to deadlift, and very much so. If I can take young ladies and seniors and put 2 fingers on their shoulders and they can't do this, they can't stand up past it. So their marginal capacity to stand is about 50 pounds away from being gone. And that'll take only about 50 years, you know? If you're 65 and I can hold you down like that, what we can do is we can teach you how to squat so that in a year I can wrap myself around you and you'll stand up with me holding on to you. And that makes the difference between whether you can live independently or not. Yeah.
Let's get a couple more at the very back.
Good answer, right? Does that work for you? Yeah, please. I mean, it's very real. The work we've done with seniors has been spectacular.
And there was a wonderful story, I can't remember, was it on CBS, of an older woman in New York? A wonderful story. She was in her late 70s, I think.
76.
76. She was about to, I think, have to move into a home. She lost her husband. But I think, you know, that was one half of the answer which I heard in your question. I think the other half was about the community that supported her through that kind of recovery process. And that even though she was significantly older than the average age in the books, that there was a real welcome, which is great to hear. Lennon.
Hi, I'm Lennon, and thank you. I was really excited to come in and be a super skeptic, and now I'm going to look into CrossFit. So I could be kind of screwed in this question because I don't know a lot about religion or CrossFit. But
what brought you here?
I'm one of the people for this gathering.
Is it a mistake?
We were also in the report, and you know, it was a surprise, and kind of landing probably similarly. But I guess my question is, if you start from the basic premise that a lot of faith traditions ultimately boil down to love each other, right? It strikes me that in what you've described, and I think a lot of questions and people in this conversation has been kind of circling around it, that you figured out somehow a Trojan horse mechanism to get people to that end, starting with the goal that's about, you know, fulfilling your genetic potential, you know, and going out and being your best possible sense. But then in the end, people really do love each other a lot and show up in their behaviors, kind of show up in that particular way. So I guess my question is, do you see CrossFit as a mechanism for inculcating a certain set of values through the back door? And if so, what are those values? Or is it a mechanism through which people with very different values come to love each other?
The assumption in your question, the preamble was brilliant, and I'm glad you came here because I think you have it exactly right. And yes, 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 and yes. Yeah. Even on the alt. Yeah, I liked all of that. I liked all of that. Yeah. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, tell me about your skepticism, because I like the skeptic. Because I'm that guy.
Well, I want to push you, Greg, on that question, though. like, is there a set of values that you want
Well,
people?
sure. What I'm telling you is that I want to repeat that I think that the strategies, paradigms, successful mechanisms are best imparted and received in the physical province. And that includes a lot of things like commitment and honesty and camaraderie. There's another element here too, and let's just get right to it. There's something that may be a corollary to the Stockholm syndrome. I had a Army captain call me up all excited one day, and fascinating man. He said, I figured out something huge. He goes, in the Special Forces, where everything's camaraderie. We use the word loosely and constantly, and it's hugely important. He goes, I just figured out what it's made of, what its constituent elements are. And he says, it's agony coupled with laughter. And I was like, oh, God, I know what he's talking about. You got a lot of laughter going on in your gym? We do all the time, every day. I mean, it was hilarious, and it was often pointed, sharp. It was, some of it nasty, all of it fun, but there was a lot of laughter, right, Jimmy? Didn't you in yours? Oh, heck yeah. I don't think any of the big numbered boxes people aren't having both the worst time of their life and the best. and that does something very different to you. Egos leave, There's so much that keeps us from being who and what we could be to each other, especially from the guys that comes from ego, and from the gals that comes from mood, Mood's an interesting thing. Let me just share some of my biases here with you. A woman will get up in the morning and go, I'm in a bad mood. And you go, oh, thanks for that. I appreciate the heads up. I'm going to be over here, Guys don't recognize mood in themselves. And what a guy will think has happened, he'll think the universe changed overnight while he was sleeping. And so the guy's just in a shitty mood, right? And I go, what's wrong? And it's like, Russ owes me $10. And he's not, and I go, is this that same $10 from like last year? Yeah. And the traffic was bad. And I'm like, dude, the traffic's bad every single day. Like, and so I have to tell my male athletes and clients that if the world changed overnight while you slept, you probably got it wrong. It's probably you.
Probably you.
Yeah. And a lot of the moodiness and the ego that I think makes a lot tough for us is eliminated. Let me speak to our example, what we've learned as a company with virtual offices. I used to say that we were a virtual company. My tech guys hated it. Company's real, the offices are virtual. We grew to I go, you're right, Ben. It's the tech guy, right? We were a global brand before we had a headquarters. And I'm running virtual offices. I wanted to learn something about it, so I went to the business literature, and there was nothing of value. And what was interesting is that much of the little that was there was fundamentally wrong. The concern seemed to be with virtual offices of shirking, people not doing their job. Nonsense. With virtual offices, shirking is impossible because everybody is only identified by their work product. And so the person that shirks, you don't get emails. You don't see them doing anything, and what does she do? Nothing. It's just how it is. In the brick and mortar world, the shirkers are the first ones there, and they're the last ones to leave. And every time you go by their office, they're looking at the monitor, right? And so it's hard. You can be confused by other elements. Here's the downside of the virtual offices, and it is a significant problem, and it's that about a third of the human race won't treat people decently that they don't have to see on a regular basis. And that really irks me. And so we have a collegiality, uber alles kind of mindset here. Get along or hit the road. Right. Incompetence, I can muster forces and fix it. And so we can hire people that need a break, that need a chance, that life hasn't been what it could have been for them, that don't have the best of skills. We've brought them in on staff, and everyone else can pitch in
now
and
they're
work
sitting
around
here. No, I'm kidding.
And make it go. But I'll just say it, the no asshole rule, those types, that's communicable. And it just takes one to make other people the same way, and it'll just rip through an organization.
Greg, we've got about 2 minutes left, and I want to ask the final question. Is that okay?
Do it.
Every movement, well, nearly every movement has a charismatic founder. What happens when you die?
I've got a wonderful cadre of senior execs that are about half my age, and they're beautiful and they're charming and they're talented, and they're going to have no trouble carrying the mantle, none at all. I have no fear of that. I've got a better bench than any leader in any organization anywhere. I know that. Listen, most of my people, 9 years without a paycheck. He worked for me for 9 years without getting a check. I got most of the people that work for me work for free. And then a business erupted and they got jobs. And so, we know where we've been, we know who we are, and we know each other, and it's inseparable.
Well, we'll end on that note. Thank you so much all for
Thank
coming.
you.
Big thank you to Greg.